When we first learned that Disney were to start making live-action remakes of all of their classic animated features, it seemed like a decent idea for some of these projects, but over time, I think most of us have become just a little bit disenchanted with the soulless nature of a lot of these remakes, and the fact that Disney are now taking liberties with the characters and the original source material
has left people with a sour taste in their mouth.
What was once guaranteed to bring in like $800 million to over $1 billion every single flick has been declining at the box office, and their next big disaster, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, has basically been mocked and derided since the date was announced. By that time, people had realized this was all just an enormous mistake, and then it just got worse from there. We found out about the casting of the new Snow White. She can't have skin white as snow like the actual source material of the story or the cartoon. It's got to be Rachel Zegler, because we're changing Hollywood, folks. We're going to change the culture through movies that don't make money anymore. We don't get dwarfs anymore in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. We have enchanted peoples. Only one of them appears to be a dwarf. That was a pretty big turnoff, and basically all the pictures that people have seen have not really felt like Snow White, and I think everyone is waiting for this enormous disaster to blow up in Disney's face. I'm not going to lie to you people. I kind of enjoy the fact that everything is blowing up in Disney's face right now, because they don't respect the audience, they don't respect their own history, and they've decided to destroy all that. And now that all this has come to fruition, places like Forbes are actually having to accept the truth and really honestly report and what's going on with these productions as far as their budgets and how much money they're actually losing. And yes, this movie is absolutely destined to lose a ton of money. We don't even know how much yet. And with the numbers that we do have provided by Forbes.com, it spells disaster. And Forbes, of course, is trying to be very nice to Disney. They're trying to make it seem like there's a pretty good chance this is going to go well. But if you read between the lines, you can see this thing has disaster written all over it. And of course, they did throw in the obligatory, if you don't like the idea of this production, you must be a racist. And that never goes well for anybody. In fact, they're calling this guy a racist. The fundamental change to the story has disenchanted David Hand, whose father directed the original animated film with Walt Disney himself. Last month, he said that the duo, quote, would be turning in their graves, unquote, as the original was made with good taste. He described it as a disgrace that Disney is trying to do something new with something that is such a great success. Isn't it funny how just deriding anyone that might have some criticism about the production and the idea behind it as just a racist on the face of themselves, as if they could never actually have any type of criticism to levy out in good faith? I would say that Mr. Hand, whose father directed the film with Walt Disney himself, might have a better grasp on those two individuals and their thoughts about the original Snow White, and what Mr. Hand understands they are changing about the original and saying, yeah, these guys would be turning in their graves. This is not what Walt Disney would want for the company. This is not what Walt Disney would want Bob Iger or anyone to do with the things that absolutely built this company. Disney World, Disneyland, Walt Disney Films, Pixar, the cruise lines, all of this was built on the backs of people like David Hand's father, people like Walt Disney, who created things that were absolutely amazing, absolutely timeless. And to this day, people love Snow White. But if you listen to Rachel Zegler, the woman that's going to be playing Snow White, that character is outdated. That story just doesn't have any relevance in 2023. That's why we need to destroy it. Well, that's why the movie absolutely needs to blow up in your face and lose hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office to teach you and Disney Corporation a lesson. Recently filed financial statements show that over the 3 years to July 31st, 2022, Disney spent $209.3 million on making the movie. The filings add that the colossal cost was partly driven by the pandemic, causing delays to the production of the motion picture. As recently revealed in the Daily Mail newspaper, Disney has received a $41.1 million reimbursement for Snow White, bringing its net spending on the picture to $168.2 million. Well, that doesn't seem all that bad. $168.2 million isn't nearly as much as Disney has been spending on a lot of their MCU movies or even Pixar movies, but that's actually only the net number associated with the film until July 31st, 2022. And that's also only money spent in the UK itself. Do we imagine that perhaps there are people in the United States that are working on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs remake? I imagine they're also paying people outside of the US. And that is only the money that we know that they spent in the UK up until the date of July 31st, 2022. And $168.2 million likely could be done. There's a decent chance if the movie only costs that much money and Disney only sinks about $82 million in marketing, that would only be $250 million that they've actually committed to it. And it would probably only need to make about $500 million, maybe a smidge more worldwide, to actually recover all the costs and perhaps just maybe sneak into the green and make Disney a little bit of money. But that is not the case. This is the baseline spending that the movie will need to cover. Its costs are likely to rise sharply as more than a year of post-production still had to be done after the date of the financial statements. If Disney retains around 50% of the takings from Snow White, the movie will need to gross $336.4 million just to cover its baseline spending of $168.2 million. Reacting to this information, financial and box office analyst Valiant Renegade wrote on Twitter, Rachel Zegler's Snow White looks like it will have a production cost of $300 million. And of that, we know at least $40 million will be reimbursed by the United Kingdom, making it more like $260 million. Let's be friendly to the guys and bring it down to $250 million for the total production budget, which is a lot of money. They're probably going to spend at least $100 million on marketing, so let's get up to the $350 million mark, which is actually more than Forbes believes that it's going to need to make just to break even. Based on production costs in the UK, only till the end of July in 2022. We've already had over a year since then, and we know they've already begun reshoots, and we've also heard all the rumors that the test screenings, once again, are not going well. Shockingly, I just can't believe people that might be interested in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs aren't interested in a Disney live-action remake where they actually don't tell a story about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's actually about Snow White, the super-duper girl boss who don't need no man, and Prince Charming isn't even in the movie now. Actually, they replaced it with a new original character. What a genius idea. I wonder why you're going to have to rewrite the ending of the movie, refilm it again, reshow it to people, and be disappointed again once you realize people going to a Disney-produced Snow White movie are actually expecting a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs remake. Not an absolute abomination that burns down everything that Walt Disney himself decided to create. So, like I said, Forbes is trying to cover from like, oh yeah, they need to make, like I said, Forbes are trying to be honest and cover this fairly and say, yeah, hey, look, this was the budget until July of last year. And we know we've had more shutdowns because we already had 2 strikes, one of which is about to be complete. But really, the movie only needs to make $336 million worldwide to break even though they admit in the article that that's likely a gross underestimate of the actual budget itself. That's only a portion of the budget, and we know that it will grow because it must grow because there is post-production likely to be happening in the United States. We know that they were reshooting scenes, without Snow White and having to make other changes to the film already, and they're doing the test screenings, which no one likes and people are not enjoying. So they're actually going to have to rewrite stuff and then reshoot it and then do more post-processing, all adding to an enormous cost for Disney themselves, probably sinking $300 million into Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs that doesn't even respect the source material. And I'm loving it, folks. I am absolutely loving it. Disney deserves all this stuff to blow up in their faces because they're a bunch of dumbasses. This actually isn't that difficult. If you want to remake Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, just remake Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Write a few new songs, add a new scene or two that actually makes sense to the scope of the movie and the story being told. Stretch it out to about 2 hours long because that's what you want to do, because you want to have a nice long run time or whatever, and be happy with it. Stop overthinking this. Stop destroying everything that Walt Disney built this company on. I understand that most of the employees of the company probably hate the history of the company itself, but you actually have to respect the customers, and the customers do not feel that way. The way they feel is they don't like this shit. They don't like these changes, and they would like you to honor the source material. If you would like an example of this, there actually was one recently. One of Disney's most anticipated live-action remakes in recent years was The Little Mermaid, which was released in May. The movie failed to make a splash and only grossed $569.2 million, according to industry analyst Box Office Mojo. This was only around half of the takings of Disney's Aladdin and Lion King remakes, which were released in 2019, and both grossed more than $1 billion. A continuation of that downward trend could see Snow White struggle to break even. I would like to add an addendum to the end of that statement from Forbes.com. We'll likely see Snow White lose money at the box office because I believe, I might be a little bit off, because that marketing budget could go up as high as $150 or $200 million if they really see that it's going to struggle and they're desperate for it to make money. So it actually could go over $100 million, and I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't go well over $100 million. But based on $250 million production budget, because they got $50 million reimbursed from the UK with a $100 million marketing budget on top of that, it will need to make back at least $700 million at the box office. And what are the chances, after this latest fiasco with Disney and one of their live action remakes, and their response once again being to call everyone racist at this, that it actually makes less money than The Little Mermaid? I would say at this juncture, it's pretty damn good. There's a good chance that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, despite the quality of the film, it might be the greatest movie of all time, based on principle alone and the way that Disney are treating their customers, actually comes under The Little Mermaid $570 million that it made worldwide. Probably hits somewhere more around $500 million, ends up losing $200 million at a minimum, and I get a laugh at him some more. I can't wait for this to be confirmed and for another one of these stupid live action remakes to blow up in Disney's face. But before then, we do get to watch the latest MCU flop blow up in Disney's face. And I cannot wait for this one because it turns out the Marvel's budget was also 2 times bigger than they had initially reported there. And it ended up being more like $280 million instead of $130. Absolutely shocking stuff right here. There's also a link in the video description.